21.
This meeting is being recorded.
I guess I should have waited. Shall I do it again?
No, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
So Kishan, could you take roll call, please?
Director Penrose,
Here.
Director Lohman,
Here.
Director Clark,
Present.
Director Ruddock, Director Ruddock.
I'm here. Sorry, I've had login problems.
No problem. You're here now. That's good. Director Slater Carter,
Present.
Chair Dye.
Here. And
Okay.
could you introduce the staff and others who are here on this call?
Yes, I have with me from the SAM treatment plant, Tim Costello, Supervisor of Treatment and Field Operations. I have George Evans, our Field Officer. Then I have Susan Sherby. Where did she go?
Where did she go?
She just vanished. She was there a few minutes back from the administration department. So besides them, we also have Jeremy Mungrais, our general counsel. And then we have our guest, Peter Medina from Mace. Who else do we have? Michelle Dragoni. We have Craig Carroll. I believe he's from Half Moon Bay Brewing Company. That's it. Director Penrose has raised her hand for some reason.
Director Penrose.
Yes, I just wanted to say to Jeremy that I was very sorry to hear about his mother's passing, as I'm sure all the board members are, and you've been in our thoughts all day.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
All right. Do we have any members of the public who would like to speak on an item that is not on the agenda?
I would like to. I've got to figure out where my hand is, but
Okay.
there's my hand. Okay.
I
Well, you can
also
just
have.
wave.
Go ahead.
I'll
Go
just
ahead,
wait.
Catherine. After that, I have a public comment.
Okay. I
ahead,
was in a
Catherine.
very interesting Zoom conference call about two bills that are at the assembly right now, Senate Bill 9 and Senate Bill 10. And Debbie, I see you are well aware of these. I have asked to have them on the MWSD agenda. I can't put it in any starker words than they terrify me. From what I was hearing and what I was reading, they are flying under the cloak for affordable housing. But when you read the bill, there's nothing about affordable in it. And essentially, it takes away single-family zoning from cities, and it makes them, putting additional units on single-family residential lots, a ministerial project without consideration of either water, sewer, or traffic, or parking. If you're within a half mile of a bus line, these don't have to conform to the local parking requirements. Essentially, over a long period or not so long period of time, it will take away our single family neighborhoods. I have on the radio been hearing many ads for the last few months, actually. Sell us your house. We'll pay cash for your house. You don't need to go through a realtor. We'll pay for it. And I got looking into it, and there's corporations like Blackstone that are buying these houses, gambling on whether or not these bills will go through. And there is a specific exclusion for the Coastal Act in SB 9. It says Coastal Act doesn't count here. So it's terrifying to me. I've asked to have it on the MWSD agenda, and I'll be sending this stuff to Clemens tonight. We're on a very short deadline. I believe the deadline, and Debbie, correct me if I'm wrong, is August 16.
So currently the legislature is on recess. and they'll be back on Monday. And then they have approximately 2 to 3 weeks to get bills from fiscal committees to the floor and enrolled into the government.
Okay,
So, during the recess, which is usually a month, there's a lot of, advocacy that goes on from various groups, because the committees and the legislative staff, are still in Sacramento doing the work. So most of those bills right now, and any bill with a fiscal impact currently, is in what is called the appropriation suspense file. And bills go to the appropriation suspense file if there's a fiscal impact of $250,000 or more. And in suspense, that basically creates a space for the legislative leadership and sometimes Department of Finance and the governor's office to decide which bills will move forward and which bills will not, right? And so all the various legislators, have their priority bills, and leadership is going to everybody and saying, what do you really need to move? What can be held over, because this is a 1st year to 2-year session? What can be held over until next session, right? So all those decisions and all those conversations are happening, under the cloak of darkness right now as we speak. And the decisions will become clear beginning next week about what's going to move and what's not. And
okay.
bills are still being amended.
And SB 9's been around for years, right?
Yeah.
SB 9
So, bills will
gets
be
changed a little, but it's not
controversial bills.
been out there for quite a while.
Controversial bills sometimes go through multiple sessions, right? So they'll be introduced, they'll become 2-year bills, they'll die in the 2nd year. There's a new session, they have to be totally reintroduced again, sometimes with different language, sometimes they're just trying again. And so big, important bills sometimes take as many as 6 years to, pass through the process. So this is the 2nd session for these housing bills. They've gone through some amendment in response to affordable housing advocates, the Building Industry Association, that sort of thing. So it may be that the safest thing during a recall year is to punt until 2022. So you might see a lot of bills just go into pause, and then in December they can move again. They can move into, back to policy committees. They can move to fiscal committees. In the 2nd year, the governor can start signing bills in March. So I'm guessing
ahead.
people should play it safe this session. I might be
Well,
wrong.
Okay, well,
that's-
this is not really on the agenda, so discussion is really not okay.
Well-
I'm being reminded by our attorney.
Except
So perhaps,
there's no attention to infrastructure.
That's
Sewer,
right.
water, any of that stuff. So that's why it's still important. And
I would like to have this as an agenda item. Debbie Ruddick, I would love to work with you on it to get the information to Keisha. I think that it terrifies me. We're in this high fire season, extreme drought, where places are running out of water up in Mendocino, and yet our legislature is so out of touch on this kind of thing. And where it leaves us, for Michelle and everyone else, is it leaves the people who live in a community to pay the bills for the developers.
Just if I could real quick, board members, one option, it sounds like this is something that there's some urgency on. The board could, if it desired, add this as an urgency item for later on the agenda for a discussion item if there's a need for action on this prior to the next board meeting.
I'd like to do a good job documenting it and put it on the next board meeting. I think it's fair to the public and to the board. I saw the Zoom call I was in was on people who were opposing this, and I want to find out who's in favor of it and why. But the fact that it doesn't address infrastructure needs is terrifying.
Well, the key thing, well, Halfmoon Bay has opposed both bills. And we did support some legislation that talked about affordable housing, right? So what we really need is affordable housing. And where we can, we're supporting that in legislation. But these bills, none of them have provision for affordable housing because they're following the supply side theory that if we just build a lot more housing, all of a sudden there will be more affordable housing. The fact of the matter is, a lot of these things are going to be, bought up by speculators, including private equity. So it's a matter of local control. Do you want to hand over the character of your neighborhoods to an absentee landlord, who lives on Wall Street?
Well, Debbie, if it's all right, I will run stuff by you. I know how busy you are and I don't want to impose on your time, but it just strikes me that this is so critical.
All right, I agree. And I think there's a consensus. Does anyone object to having this on our next agenda when we have more background and when it's properly agendized so we can discuss it? Everybody okay with that? Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, Debbie. Great information. Kishan, did you have an item that you wanted to discuss?
Yes, I've received 2 public comments via email. And the first one, the gentleman is not here, but he requested that his comments be read out. And the second one is from a gentleman who's already here, Craig Carroll, but I cannot read that document because it references a confidential document which will be read out in the closed session. So I would start with the one which I mentioned earlier. It is from Dan Littlefield. He's the owner at Hop Dogma Brewing Company. It goes like this. Dear Sewer Authority Midcoastside, my name is Dan Littlefield, and I am the owner of Hop Dogma Brewing Company, located in the Pillar Point Harbor. I would like to address a few issues in regards to the ongoing investigation into the biological oxygen demand BOD issue that we are facing. First of all, I want to express that I realize this is a very difficult situation for all involved. We are eager to find the cause, as I know you are as well. We are concerned about the issue and want to find answers. We greatly admire and respect the important work that you are doing. That being said, I have some concerns that I wish to make public. First of all, I'm worried that the breweries on the coast side, which are relatively very small in annual production, are being unfairly targeted as what I see as easy scapegoats for the situation. We are quite aware that breweries have caused problems for sewer systems elsewhere. However, when you look at the size of these operations, they're almost always much larger, oftentimes producing tens of thousands of more barrels per year. If you look at the data from similar size operations, it is almost impossible to find a scenario in which a brewery of our relative size have ever caused these kinds of BOD issues for a municipal sewer authority. We have provided samples and cooperated with all requests thus far. I have yet to see any results from any of our tests, and I'm curious to know the outcomes. I also am curious to know if other industries and businesses in the vicinity have done similar tests and what their results were. I want to point out that we were making more beer before the COVID-19 pandemic, and at the time period when we were first approached about this issue, we were at a low point of production. We feel you would have seen BOD spikes much more often before the pandemic if we were truly the ones to blame. Also, we have noticed that several of these BOD spikes are occurring on weekends when we do not have any beer production or discharging occurring in the brew house. We literally send nothing down the drains on weekends. Yet several of the biggest spikes in BOD have come on weekends. I am concerned that during the pandemic, when so many more people were or are working from home and undeniably contributing more to the home sewer system, that it is being overloaded, but not necessarily by us. We have only just begun producing beer in any resemblance to what we did pre-pandemic. Financially, it was a devastating period for us in which we took on hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt just to stay open. I'm afraid that if we are subject to a significant fine or fee, it would spell doom for my business and will be an insurmountable nail in the coffin. I also want to note that I have recently received a phone call shaming us for harming the environment due to the increasingly blameful assumptions being made during public meetings. Again, there simply is no evidence that we are responsible for the BOD spikes at this time. We are an extremely small brewery. We produce 996 barrels. For your information, 1 barrel unit of beer is 31.5 gallons of beer last year, which is unusually small in this industry. During the pandemic, our production almost came to a complete stop many times, oftentimes when some of the biggest spikes in BOD were taking place. I believe that we are minimally responsible for any BOD spikes, and after doing a lot of research, I'm prepared to show data on just how nearly impossible it would be for a brewery our size to cause such issues. I know this is a very difficult problem and one that we need to get to the bottom of. However, at this time, I'm not willing to accept that we are the culprits. It is well documented that our sewer system is outdated and arguably has been neglected. There are undoubtedly expensive upgrades that need to take place. However, it shouldn't come at the expense of small businesses that have been responsible in their practices, locally charitable and philanthropic, and most importantly, minimally responsible for this BOD issue. Should you have any questions or ever wish to visit our facility to see our operations in person, please feel free to contact me at dan@hopdogma.com. Thank you for your time. Dan Littlefield, owner at Hop Dogma Brewing Company. Thanks.
And you don't really need to have a lot of, if we could, board members, I mean, if folks want to respond briefly, you can, but given the nature of the comments, I mean, it would probably just, if it's going to be any comment, any response should be very brief.
I think we're going to be discussing items in closed session related to this, and we'll come back.
I'd like to thank Dan and Craig for joining in the meeting and in the public process. I hope they will stay involved because we really do need to find a good, equitable, effective solution that works for a whole lot of people. And so thank you.
Yes, I agree with that. Anything else for public comment? Right, moving on. Thank you again for speaking up, Craig and whatever. Moving on to the consent agenda. Does anyone want to pull either item from the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, would someone make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Lots of seconds.
Lots of seconds.
Could you call the roll, please?
Director Penrose,
Aye.
Director Lohman,
Yes.
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Raddock,
Aye.
Director Slater Carter,
Yes.
Chair Dye,
Yes.
motion approved.
Okay, moving on to regular business. Our first item is to review and receive the financial report for Q3 fiscal year 2021. And I will turn that over to you, Kishan, and our financial team.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair Dye. This is the financial report for Q3 fiscal year 2021, budget versus actual. And this was discussed at length at the previous finance committee meeting. And thereafter, it was decided that we bring it to the full board to discuss. So the details are in the packet, and I have Peter Medina from Maze Consulting who prepared this. He's going to discuss about this, and I'm going to allow him to share his screen so that he can go into depth in moving further. Peter, ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm
I'm going to share, you can share your screen.
Okay, let's go ahead and move a few things around here. I was so prepared until I wasn't. Okay, share screen. It's going to be this guy here. And this one up here. Okay. As Kishan noted, so we are going to be going over the Q3, which is the period ending 3/31 of 2021. We, as a finance team, we really enjoy these quarter end reviews because they allow us to go in depth for the review of various categorizations of revenue and expenditures. The revenue side of it's relatively straightforward, as the budget is broken into 12 and then billed out monthly. So your guys' report, which is the second page of that report, I think does a good job of giving you guys a format which you guys are comfortable with, which is really lines up with the audit, but this one provides better context as it provides the budget. So what we're looking for there are 75%. I mean, that would be ideal for Q3. On the revenue side of things, yes, we get pretty close, but the expenditure side of it, we have some variances and we'll go over those. So with that, we'll go through. So as the purpose is just to keep everyone abreast, the finance team as well as the finance committee has met on this report, I believe twice for the committee, and then the team multiple times in various meetings. So as it gives us a chance to just go through and ask questions. Kish and George all ask a number of questions, and I said we're all in it together in that. So it helps us to say, okay, what are we missing here, if anything? Okay, so now going through the figures. On the revenue side, so the general fund is, as we consider to be, all revenue sources that are not collections. We hold collections separate as a separate fund, as well as a separate operation of sorts. So the discussion points are going to go over both. So revenue-wise and expenditure-wise, tracking pretty well, about 74% and 78% for revenues and expenditures. Here we go, going through kind of more in depth of your guys' page 2. O&M, 75. So that's no issue at all. We are doing really well on collections, and I said both Susie and George are on top of this. So I said we're good here for both the O&M as well as capital contributions. Other income is lagging pretty far behind. This is, I believe, Ox Mountain for the leachate that the contract was discontinued early part of the fiscal year, so that part has really lagged behind. So, and so that's not gonna make up over the rest of the fiscal year. And then interest and dividend, LAIF has not performed up to expectations that were set forth last spring during the budget process. That's really statewide for anybody that is in LAIF. We're all seeing that. Okay, so now when we get into the expenditures, our treatment expense, we're over budget. I say about 15%. We have the discussion in the board packet for why these are the accounts. That piece really just there are a number of items which, when looking at them, yeah, they're not project related, but they are of a nature where they'll more than likely be capitalized at fiscal year end, but that is not the process that we hold throughout the year. So we capture the expenditures. They are over budget. So the big one being the digester recoding, that was about $326,000, as well as various service calls to SCADA. That is not going to be able to be capitalized, but it's something that was quite a bit more than we had anticipated during last budget cycle. So those are those pieces there. Going through here, so this is the discussion of what we just went over as far as the breakdown of the various individual costs that go into these line items, which has caused us to be over budget. The next one being, okay, admin over budget, and mainly the big one here being the legal fees. That it appears to be unbudgeted, and it just wasn't captured, and they're necessary, and so they're being paid. The insurance premiums also, we went double. It was more so than what was expected. Infrastructure is also discussed here. I believe the board package does a better job of having the discussion on what the infrastructure expenditures are for. The big one being the wet weather facility expansion project. This is the discussion on that, but that's a multi-year project that is going to go into three full fiscal years. So it's the biggest project that we're working on, and I said there are costs that are associated with it on a month-by-month basis. So that's that piece. Okay, now we get into collections. The Montero piece being 97%, it's really just more of a categorization, not really an issue. But once again, I think your board packet does a better job of breaking that out. We've noticed that you guys said it's 75% across the board, except for the pass-through costs. Pass-through costs are what Sam incurs that are billed directly to the member agency, and they are repaid. It gets captured. It nets out to zero. So your board packet, you'll see it there as $1,000 in and $67,000 out. We capture both sides of the equation, being the revenue and the expenditure, just for ease of bookkeeping. But like I said, when it comes to these reports, it does need to be isolated and brought out just so that we can still see that we are hitting at 75% of revenue. On the collection side of things, for the expenditures, let's see what's in here. This was the $60,000. This was actually a little bit more. But on the expenditure side, we are low, and that is mainly because there was anticipated rental expenses that were identified during the budget process, so 2 years ago, that never quite came to fruition during this fiscal year. So there was money in place there, it wasn't utilized, so we're under budget. In addition, there are some additional, he said, indirect costs for the insurance premiums that were budgeted for an allocation of sorts to the collection fund, but have not been performed. So that's the main differences there. Yes, as a discussion, rental expenditures, and then the insurance premiums. So that's really it. Any questions? Hold on, let's go here to stop share. Any questions to the board at large?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm not sure I understand why the insurance premiums are so skewed.
So there is an indirect portion which historically had been allocated. Going through these past few years, we had discussed not making that allocation. If we look at the accounts that are being impacted, we see that it is those insurance premiums. Administration's high and collections is low. If we were to allocate those, yes, we would be more in line with what the budget dictated for this year, but we haven't made that adjustment at this point. We've discussed it in previous fiscal years, and it's been a point of, I'm not going to say contention, but it's been disagreed between the member agency as far as allocable versus direct. So that's where we're at, and that's what it looks like for Q3 going forward. Something that will have to get settled out before we issue a trial balance for the audit.
Yeah,
I don't understand that at all.
Peter, if I may, isn't it also that the insurance premium is typically paid in the first few months of the year? So this is a Q3, so that's why it looks a lot. While if we do the same at the end of the year, it would be that much of an increase. Am I right?
If you were to look at it over a calendar year, yes, we would see it level out as the calendar year goes forward. However, in this case, yes, I said they are paid at the beginning of the year, the beginning of the calendar year, so it does create a spike at that point.
Catherine, did you have your hand up or?
You're muted, Catherine.
Muted with my hand up. Boy, is that a conundrum. I thought I'd put my hand down, but I like the way this is presented so clearly. And my thanks to Barbara, because we've done a lot of, we worked a lot with Peter to make it more simple for the purpose of explaining it, but the data is all available for those who want to delve in much deeper. So thank you to Peter and Barbara.
Was this presentation available to us before the meeting?
The presentation, no.
And did we review this in the finance committee?
Yes.
Specifically?
Yes. Yeah, it's actually the same thing what's in your packet. It's been elaborated a little more, but we did discuss this in the finance committee meeting.
And plus, there was in prior quarterly reports, we touched on this because especially at the end of the first quarter, it looked like it was out of whack because the reason Kishan mentioned is that the insurance costs are paid up front. The other factor that didn't get mentioned is that we did have an higher than normal insurance costs. So when we budgeted based on the prior years, bumped it up a little bit, but it ended up being a lot higher than we anticipated. So you've got a couple issues happening. First, like I said, like Kishan mentioned, you pay the whole thing at the start. So then it gets, as you get further down the year, it becomes less of an issue. The second thing was we had higher costs than we did the prior year, higher than expected. And then the third item was, and Peter was touching on this, and we did touch on this earlier in the year, but when we set up the budget, when we did the collections budget, we were reacting to comments made at the end of the prior year that we only wanted to include direct costs. So the insurance was one of the things that got pulled out of collection and put back to the treatment plant. And so that's why you're seeing it in zeros now, because after discussing things, we were told that, well, we want to include that as some of the costs that are being allocated. So the problem is when the budget's already set and there's changes, then you get numbers like that. I'm not sure if that made it any clearer or more confusing, but yeah, there's several items at work here, but we've discussed them at bits and pieces at each quarter, probably not all at the same time, and maybe that's why there's still some confusion. Sorry about that.
Are there any more comments?
Yeah, one clarifying question. Why did insurance premiums go up? Is that industry-wide or is it Sam in particular?
Part of the insurance cost is they pool what they anticipate, and they actually underestimated for the prior year. So then what happens is that amount you have to pay. So there's the amount that was underpaid in the prior year in terms of actual costs. And then they double that, saying that, well, you're probably going to, incur the same cost this year. So it's sort of like a double-edged sword when insurance goes up. And I can provide the actual numbers. I forget it right now because it was done at the beginning of the year, but I can pull them and provide them to the board if required.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question or a comment? Do we need a motion to receive?
I do.
review and
Director
receive?
Clark has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Matthew. Go ahead.
This is probably not really a question for the finance people, but the SCADA system is running over budget. I didn't quite catch why that was, but it's been in operation for the new one, a relatively short time. But it should be, when it's completely functional, it should be, the budget should cover it easily every year, I would think. So what is the situation with SCADA? Were consultants called in, or new actual technical equipment required, or why did it go over?
Director Clark, there's nothing out of the ordinary that we have done during the past year. It's just that you would observe that in your regular packets, like for example, in the July second meeting of the packet, you've seen that a significant amount of expenses have been allocated to projects and will be capitalized at the year end upon finalization of the annual audit. Therefore, if the expenses were adjusted to reflect this process, then the expenses would be, just to give you an idea, it would be just 91% of the budget. That was almost end of June. We were yet to add some more invoices. So it's really not over budget. It's just that capitalizing some of the items which normally takes place at the end during the audit time. Peter, am I right? Would you like to elaborate a little more, Peter or George?
And from my recollection from the budget process, the SCADA contract is broken up into a couple different components. One part being their service calls, and the other part being the I believe the payment for the uses of their equipment. So this is noting the service calls. So I'm not sure if that was expected or if something went down at the plant, but that's one that we have to look at to see whether or not it was the purchase of additional equipment or actual service calls. Like I said, as you said, one will be capitalized and the other is going to be just a straight expense. But I know that contract is not just a time. I said there are a few different components to that contract.
So Sam's essentially renting equipment for the SCADA system?
No, we own it. It's not renting, we own it. We own the SCADA system. We have the software, we have the computers and all the PLCs and other things which give signals. Everything is owned by Sam. We don't rent it out.
Well, most importantly, is the SCADA system running as it should?
Yes, it is. Like I told you earlier, we haven't done anything out of the ordinary during the last year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions or comments? Do we need a motion to review and receive, or is it a consensus?
Yes, we need a motion and a second to receive and file.
We have a motion to review and receive the financial report for
So moved.
this year. Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second. It was Director Penrose who moved it, and I'll second it.
Could we have a roll call, please?
Director Penrose,
Aye.
Director Lohman,
Yes.
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Radok,
Aye.
Director Slater Carter,
Yes.
Chair Dye,
Yes.
motion approved.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on to General Manager's report.
I have nothing much to report here. This is the first session in the month of August, so a detailed report will be presented during the second board meeting, like always. So nothing specific to report.
All right, thank you. Moving on to Attorney's report.
Evening, directors. I have nothing to report outside of our closed session this evening.
Okay. Do we have any director's reports?
I'd like to say I'm at the California Association of Sewer Agencies conference, and I will be sending all the links and information to Keishan so he can distribute them to the members of the board, and you can send them off to the rest of your boards.
Thank you.
All right, topics for future board consideration. We discussed one already. Are there any other items that people want to suggest or move up? Not seeing any hands. All right, moving on. I guess we will now go to closed session. So we will say goodbye to our non-closed session friends.
Yep. Thank you everyone for being present at the board meeting, and thank you, Peter.